The good person, kind person, likable person identity can stem from a number of different places, but typically in childhood, we might have been given the message that if we did the right thing, if we behaved ourselves, then and we helped out or something along those lines, then we got praise, we got attention, we got love. And so you could see how easily it would be that we could want to do more of that. And then somewhere along the line, we start developing it as an identity that, I'm a good girl, I'm a good boy, I'm a good person. And because we got rewarded for it. And for some of us, we might have felt like we were a bad child. We might have been rebellious or traumatized or playing up. And somewhere along the line, we decided we didn't want to be like that anymore. It was causing too much harm for other people, it was pushing people away. And so we made a decision, probably unconsciously, to no longer act like that and instead to hold this image of a good person. And from then on, I'm going to be the nicest, kindest person, the warmest person that people can come to talk to. I don't want to be that old person anymore that I was. And I don't want people to know that that's in here hiding. And so we can actually be holding both identities simultaneously. I'm a bad person, or I'm rebellious, or I'm trouble. And also, I'm a good person, I'm the nicest person, I'm the friendliest person. We can be holding both sides simultaneously. And it can often come from trauma. So, depending on what was going on that was traumatic in childhood, we might have gone into roles of being a people pleaser, being a fixer. The codependent fixer that I've talked about before often goes hand in hand with this identity as well. And we might have done it for our safety. So if it was dangerous in any way in childhood, if we established that the safest way for us to survive was to be very nice and very pleasing and just give people whatever they needed, or always be super helpful, or whatever strategy it was to survive at that time, then this can easily start to form part of our identity structure and then just become how we operate as adults. So that will include things like people pleasing, fawning, and bending over backwards for people, and doing everything for you to meet other people's needs, and neglecting yourself, which is more going into the codependent fixer. But also just being never being any trouble. I'm guaranteed always never going to push back. I'm never going to fight back. No matter what you do to me, I'll always be gentle and quiet, even. And because I'm a good girl, I'm a good boy. So often this stems from trauma, and then we just carry it on through life, not realizing that that part of who we are is actually a trauma response and also an identity. And but regardless of where it formed, it could have even formed a bit later on in life. There was an event as a teenager where you did something that you weren't proud of, that you may have forgotten all about, but I see this from time to time, that you feel embarrassed about. Perhaps you were a bully, or you were mean, or you punched someone, or you did something that we do as humans. We're not always perfect. And in that, you felt really, really bad about yourself, about how you were going to be perceived, about the other person. And in that moment, you decided, again, probably unconsciously, that I don't want to ever behave like this again. I don't want anyone to ever look at me that way again. I don't want to be perceived as that person. So I'm going to wear the opposite, this mask of goodness, kindness, and and it works. So we wear this mask and we do it automatically, and we're out being a kind and loving, generous, warm, good person in the world. And it works for us. We have a life where we have managed to avoid conflict, and we are liked by people, and it is a helpful identity as far as getting on with life and enjoying life. We can have lots of friends, we can and perhaps do well at work because of it. So I'm not saying it's bad or wrong or anything like that. As far as identities go, it's probably one of the better ones to have. But when we're talking about awakening, we're always talking about genuine awakening being releasing identities so that you can live from a non-identity place. That's what it is to be awake. To live from awareness is to live from no identity, because awareness is not an identity or a thing. It's what remains underneath all of the other identity structure that we peel back. So this one is hard to see because it is a nice one. It's one we don't want to give up. It's hiding in plain sight, and we can easily tell ourselves, well, isn't it a nice thing to be a nice, kind person in the world, to be warm and loving? And it's like, well, of course it is. But also, is there an identity there? Do you believe that you are a person that has that quality? And one of the ways you can start to see whether you have this identity is not just that you are a nice, kind person, and that's how people, you're approachable, you're a good person, you do the right thing, you follow the rules, you don't push back, you don't get in fights and arguments. You're going to know that about yourself is pretty obvious. But also, you can question, what would it be like to not be perceived in that way? So if someone said something to you like, you're not really a very nice person, are you? Would that be very triggering for you? If so, then you know you're onto something here. So if someone gave you a critique, a friend, um a whoever it is, a family member, what would be the worst critique they could give you? Would it be that you're actually a pretty bad person? You pretend to be good, you pretend to be all nice and like well behaved and good, but you're actually, I don't know, there's something wrong with you. You actually seem like bad or broken or wrong. And or you sort of act friendly, but I don't really think you are. I actually find you kind of cold and unapproachable. So what would those words be that would be very triggering for you? And that can give you a helpful indicator of the opposite of that is what the identity is. So if someone said, if the worst, most painful thing someone could say to you is that you're actually bad, then of course that means you might have a good person identity. I need to be perceived as good. I need to be perceived as doing the right thing, of having high morals and ethics, of having this good standing in the world. And so moving away from where it stemmed from, although that is an excellent inquiry to do to help to break it, is to go to the origin, do healing, do inner child work, and work on where it came from. But here we're wanting to just identify whether it's actually there. So this is how we do it. What would be the trigger? Or you could think, when people have criticized me in the past, what was it that got me? What was it that stung? If it's around these words to do with goodness, kindness, approachability, friendliness, it's in this realm of identity that I'm talking about here. So that's the best way to identify it, is to contemplate that for yourself, imagine that happening, or check back on other times when you have been triggered and something like similar to that has happened, and what was it exactly that they said, and you'll be able to get that word that's right for you as to what identity you might have hiding out here. And then once we see that we have it, that's the first step. And it can be hard, it can sting a little, it can be a bit confronting to see, but once we accept that that is there, then of course, if we're going through an awakening, we're going to want to put it down. So again, it is easy to tell ourselves, well, does that mean I will become a bad person, or that I'm not going to be kind to people anymore, or that I'll have no emotions, or that whatever it is, we're going to tell ourselves something. And it's none of that. We're just putting down an identity structure. It's not really going to change so much how you behave in the world. It will a little, particularly while you're adjusting. But innately within our being, within awareness, are these beautiful qualities of being loving and kind and empathic and wise and all other things as well. But that's innate within our being. So that will still remain. And when you're awake, that will only ever get stronger. But it's not coming from an identity. That's the difference. So it's the identity that we're really wanting to look at and to put down. It's the agenda as to why we're saying those things and behaving that way and holding that mask, holding that image as the good person. So this could be that you do charity work and you like to be the face of something like that. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing any of these things. The work to do is to see what your agenda is. What's the unconscious agenda driving that? Why do you need to be perceived in that way? What are you getting out of that? What needs to be healed from the past because of that? So we just have to look at it, and it requires a bit of courage. It's hard to see, but why do I behave in those ways? Why do I go to those groups and be the face of whatever? Just start to question it, and then we'll see whether we want to keep doing those behaviors and maintaining that image. And then just trying to be a little bit rebellious, a little bit maybe not such of a rule follower, maybe not quite as friendly. That is a interesting and helpful way to start to break this. So if you always message back to people immediately because you're worried about how they feel or their needs, or if you always say yes to things, or whatever these strategies you have that are holding this identity structure in place, then just start to push on that a little bit and just start to not do those things as much and just feel into how that feels as you start to put down that mask and that image. So for example, if you always follow the rules, you're very compliant, you do everything you're told at work, just maybe don't do that as much. Just break a little rule here and there, do something a little bit rebellious. Again, we're not talking about the extremes with this. We're just trying to lean into it a little bit. So just do something that you wouldn't normally do that would maintain that image. And I found this a useful part of breaking the image. So healing the origin of it certainly helped, but what helped even more is just changing my behaviors where I was playing into this and just starting to I would just break the odd road rule, just not indicate, or things that were very minor. But that was pushing things for me because I had to follow all the rules. I had to do everything 100% perfectly. I had to, that's what made me feel safer in childhood. So, but also was an identity. So the compliance, that type of thing can be a part of this identity structure. So just bending little rules here and there, and letting, maybe if there's a line of people, you could say, I was here first, and instead of always putting yourself last. These are just some examples that you can do. It's just to help you to push out of that comfort zone and see that you're safe when you're not always being the good person, and that you can operate in the world in a way that doesn't require that mask, that's actually just fine. And then in the end, what can blossom is your real authentic, the authentic loving kindness that comes from your being, which will have similar traits, of course, to the mask that you are wearing of that good person, kind person identity. It will still perhaps want to do acts of service and help other people and maybe do charity work. And so there's a big crossover between holding this mask and the behaviors that we do because of this identity and our being. There will be similar traits, but we want to peel back the bit that's false, which is the identity structure that formed around this because of whatever happened in childhood. Peel that back to reveal the authentic love and empathy that our being has. The mask that we wear that comes from the wounding, it is coming from traumas, it's coming from desperation and fear sometimes, and it it's not genuine. It is wounding, and it is neediness for validation and admiration and love. It's child parts, trying to be liked, trying to belong. And so, in that sense, it has an unconscious agenda. So, agenda is in a word that can be triggering for people because it can sound very, dark and manipulative, but an agenda can be just an unconscious driver coming from wounds, from childhood wounds. That's I didn't get my needs met as a child, and so now I have to maintain this image to try to get my needs met now, to try to feel like I belong. And so this is why letting this go can be hard and scary, because it's really coming from that wounded place in childhood. So I highly recommend healing the childhood wounds first as you're going through the process of starting to put down this mask so it's not so painful. Lots of inner child work is going to really help with this, as those child parts are feeling a bit shaky as you're trying to put down this mask. That's likely to happen because they're going to feel like, well, maybe I'm not going to be able to be loved anymore if I stop behaving in this way. If I stop being the nicest person in the room, the kind person that everybody can come to and tell me their problems, and if I stop behaving in that way, maybe I won't be loved anymore. Maybe I'll just disappear. So when we're thinking like that, we can see the wounding and we can see the identity in it. And so the question is, who would I be without that strategy? Who would I be if I wasn't a good person? What would be left? And if that is challenging to feel into, and it feels like nothing is there, and it feels scary, then you're onto something. We're talking about identity there. When we shift identity, it can be scary and painful, but that's how we know we're on the right track. So if I couldn't act in that way anymore, if that part of my personality was deleted and I had to go to work tomorrow and I could no longer be the good person, how would I feel? How would I feel to no longer be that? Who am I without the good person identity?